Hi, I'm Gary Megan, and I was a judge on Australian MasterChef for 11 years. Judges, like parents, are not allowed to show their favourites. But that first series of MasterChef was pretty special, and I think it was because nobody had any idea what to expect. And that's where I met the subject of tonight's Australian story, Poh Ling Yeow. What viewers saw was someone who was fun, intensely creative and competitive, but most of all, somebody who loved to take a risk. And that's Poh. But tonight's story shows us that she is so much more than that.
I've always had this feeling since I was very young that cool things were going to happen to my life. It's a really odd thing to say out loud, but it's almost like a little secret that I've had with myself.
Poh is like a magnet. You go out with her and you can see people look once, twice. She just has an amazing energy.
Captain Chaos is here!
I think she's just so authentic. I think she's just authentically herself, and I think that's what people resonate with.
Oh my God, Food Dad's putting so much pressure on me.
15 minutes to go!
I remember first seeing Poh about 13 years ago at the auditions of MasterChef Australia. And I remember looking across the room and I just watched this, I suppose, this aura, an infectious laugh, and I was like, who the hell is this person?
It's supposed to be on stage, Bo. What are you doing?
I don't think she was trying to be a star. Nobody knew what the show was going to turn into.
Poh Ling Yeow, Bryce Adams, and Mandy Hall.
Part of what made her popular, I think, was her resilience and her ability to bounce back from a disaster.
I need another pot for my garlic oil.
They talk about imposter syndrome. I think she's got a lot of that, even though from the outside, she's got so much ability and skill and personality.
I need to focus, I'm getting nervous.
I think there's always that little slither of doubt.
I have so many moments where I think back to that really, really shy kid.
They're nearly there.
I was such a nerd and so sort of socially underdeveloped. And to look at where I'm at now, yeah, it does amaze me. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like, how did I get here? It's a miracle. I've always felt like I'm slightly sort of beamed in from somewhere else. That outsider feeling is part of me. It's not about where I am. I'm sorting out budgie feathers that I've collected from my budgies, and I make little mandalas out of them. Like a lot of artists, I just keep painting the same thing over and over again, and it is who I call the girl. I haven't really given her a name. They're all like iterations of my girl. I came up with her when I was just kind of thinking about all the features that I hated about myself as a kid, because I think that's the thing that caused me the most stress growing up, is just looking different. I never say she's me, I say she's autobiographical because I use her to tell my stories.
The girl looks like a little bit of an alien. I like that sense of discomfort when I look at those paintings because it accurately sums up the way that you feel sometimes as an immigrant in a new country or someone that doesn't look like everyone around you.
I did have many years of feeling very, very guilty. I thought, oh man, I'm really a bad Asian. Like, I can't speak the language. I almost was a bit lost in terms of my identity, and I felt like I had to make good of it somehow. But now I kind of feel like through the art, through painting the girl, and also through the food, I've realised that's enough for me. Like, I'm okay with that.
Ultimately, Poh does not like being put in a box. She doesn't want to be seen as even an Asian, a woman, a this, a that. she just wants to be seen as herself.
呢個係熱天㗎嘛。你講你愛紅。I was born in Kuala Lumpur. We are 5th generation Chinese born in Malaysia. Do you love this dish? It's like one of my favourites. I grew up kind of having two mums. Of course, there was my mum, Christina, and also my great auntie Kim, who's actually my mum's auntie. Is that enough? Twice?
That's better. You've got to watch her like a hawk.
Dodgy. I was surrounded by extended family that were amazing cooks. And mum was very strict. Like, if I dropped a little bit of flour on the counter. Mum taught me, you know, how to line a cake tin impeccably when I was like 9, and I would watch her cook cakes over and over again, like, you know, 7 times in a row until she got it right.
She wasn't really big into cooking when she was young.
Baking I was.
Yeah, baking.
Mega into baking.
But not into like cooking as in traditional food or anything, just baking mainly. I think most young ladies start with baking. Yeah.
As every young woman should. I would describe my childhood as having a combination of pretty happy times at home, but then at school I was an incredibly sad, anxious child. I'm pretty sure I had some kind of learning difficulty because all I remember is I couldn't understand anything and I really, really struggled. And I remember I would bawl my eyes out till recess, and I'd always used to like look at how wet my hanky was and feel really sorry for myself. Masterclass from Auntie Kim on mint omelette.
She struggled in Malaysia because she really didn't like the Malay language. And the schools were all like conducted in Malay.
Sesame oil. At home we spoke English and Cantonese. Oh, that smell. I love it. My Cantonese, that's just like a mangled mess now because I just haven't had enough practice. I was 9 when my parents told us that we were moving to Australia to allow us to have a really good education. I immediately felt a sense of belonging when I came here. It was like this miracle. When I got to school, everything really did make sense. I got really good marks right away. I still definitely felt different to the other kids, and that was very much a physical thing. The way I looked, and also I felt a complete lack of confidence with my physicality. So playing sport, which is such a huge part of Australian school life, I just had no confidence in that area at all. So I spent a lot of my time just shedding all the things that made me feel different. And part of the shedding was the Poh Ling part. I always wrote my name as Sharon Poh Ling Yeow as a kid. It's very common for, you know, Chinese to have English names. But no one ever really called me Sharon. And I think it just took one kid to say, oh, let's go bowling polling, and I was like, okay, done. We're going with Sharon. Mum and Dad worked really hard running our news agency. Mum, she was very strict on me. I wasn't allowed to socialise much as a kid.
It's only because we care and love them that we are being strict with them. You know, the strictness is, you know, it's like tough love.
I did feel lonely in my teenage years, definitely, because when all the other kids were, you know, getting into boys and able to socialise and things like that, I just had no idea. I was really frustrated, yeah, and I just had to suck it up. I think that forced me to grow this internal world. And that's really how my love for drawing began. It gave me this magical feeling of, yeah, having a sense of purpose and belonging in the world. Yeah, I just identified that. It's like when I do this, I feel really terrific about myself, and I can generate that feeling, and it's something that no one can take away from me. When I was around 16, my family went through some issues with our business going bad, And we were feeling quite vulnerable, and the missionaries came knocking from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and Mum and I ended up converting to Mormonism. Because of that feeling of always being on the outer, it felt really nice to belong to a place that felt very safe and welcoming.
What they had to share certainly gave Mum and Poh some comfort. I was not that way inclined at the time. But yeah, gradually I warmed to it.
I think for me, I just kind of quite dug the handsome young American boys, to be honest. And they were just so kind and so gentlemanly. I finished school in '91. The first priority was to get a job, save up money, so I could get away from my parents and have freedom. Not because I didn't like them, but because I'd just grown up in such a closeted environment and I just needed to spread my wings. So I ended up living overseas for about 9 months. I was about 3 months in Provo, Utah. Provo is a Mormon university town. I thought I was going to find myself a really decent Mormon boy, and I managed to just kind of attract the antithesis of everything that my mum and dad would want for me. In the blink of an eye, we were just, you know, having this torrid love affair, and he popped my cherry. I don't know if my parents actually know that. He turned out to be a male escort from LA. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise, package. And then I ended up going to Canada. Canada truly turned my world upside down. My first best friend was trans, and I just saw this cross-section of the world that I'd never experienced before. And that's when I started to really question whether I could go back to church.
The style of religion that they are and were involved in, there are a lot of rules and regulations that come with that. And all of a sudden, everything that you've, you know, kind of lived your life by is now being completely challenged.
When I came back, that's when I met Matt at church. We were both at this fork in the road philosophically. We were not gelling with the doctrine of the church anymore. And we'd have these wildly long conversations to flesh out all our grievances that we felt. We started dating, and we thought the right thing to do was to get married. That's what, you know, the church and both sets of parents were expecting, so we got married. But before we got married, we did something incredibly controversial, and we left the church.
Leaving the church for Poh was, yeah, I think, I still think to now, you know, I still think that she would probably see that as still as one of the biggest life decisions she's ever made.
Yeah. I was a bit disappointed, obviously, but I always believe that religion comes from the heart. If you force somebody to believe in something that you believe and their heart's not there, what's the use? There's no point, you know?
When we left the church, this huge cloud lifted. Probably for the first time in my life, I felt completely free.
Okay, come on. Go. Rhino, come on. Quick. Quick.
First day I met Poh was in 1996, on the first day of uni.
Huzzah. Sorry, I smell of dog.
We just kind of got along just straight away, and we're very similar. We like the same things, so it was always really easy to just kind of hang out and chat.
Everything's always so cute at your house.
Cup of tea.
Cup of tea.
She did the same course as me. She's an illustrator as well.
Oh my God, so cute.
Matt used to pick me up from uni, and we'd drop her off on the way home. So that's how sort of our lives became entangled.
I'm like, who's got a vase? She's drinking out of a vase of tea.
And I've got like a thimble. She was kind of umming and ahhing about changing her name. I said, what is it? She goes, oh, it sounds really weird. I was like, what is it? And she said, Poh. I was like, that's way cooler than Sharon. There's no Pohs out there. There's plenty of Sharons. So, yeah, she just went with it.
But funnily enough, my mum actually still often calls me Sharon. I was doing a little bit of graphic designing, a little bit of illustration, and a little bit of makeup and hair. And also little bits of acting. So I just had my fingers in lots of pies. Matt put the idea of being a professional painter into my head. I mean, I knew I had ability, but to push myself into doing painting as a professional was such a big deal in my head. And then like a couple weeks later, he said, I kind of made an appointment for you. So he's like, you better start painting because you need to go with some work to show the gallerist.
Poh arrived with arms full of paintings. They were very elegant and simple, and I could see where she could build this.
He agreed to give me a little solo show in the upstairs gallery. And that first show was a huge success. I sold like 80% of my work. And so it was just all guns from there.
She was pretty relentless in her exploration. I found her technique evolving, getting much more sophisticated. She became more self-reflective, and there was a series of works called The Girl.
The thing that I find interesting about The Girl is that you can't see her eyes, like there's no pupils. But of course, you can't avoid the fact that the girl looks a little bit like Poh. And as Poh gets older, the girl gets slightly older as well.
It was actually going through the process of designing her face that I had this revelation that this chip that I've had on my shoulder all these years was not at all informed by anything externally, but completely came from me and my own self-esteem. And so I kind of used her as almost like a meditation, and I just painted and painted and painted her. And now I really like my features.
Right.
I can't remember any point in Matt and I's relationship where we never argued.
Law of diminishing returns, which you keep telling me I'm using incorrectly.
Yeah, and you used it incorrectly there as well.
And it's because we're so similar. We are equally as neurotic, and we have to, you know, be right.
And they'll run it for the public for 3 months.
We're just the worst combination.
Is that for next year, obviously?
It wasn't always like really kind of contentious. It was just, they both have very strong opinions on everything. So they just butted heads a lot.
That's next week.
I was in front of my canvas and a very clear thought came into my head, which was like, you need to leave. Like, this is so toxic. And I just legged it to the, birth, death, marriages, got myself a divorce kit, and then just served Matt up the divorce papers. So we were together for a decade.
After they broke up, Matt and I, we always kind of like got along well. And it just kind of, it was a natural kind of progression, like after they broke up, that we kind of got together and the trio kind of stayed together, you know? Nothing really changed except that I was with Matt now. So it sounds very bohemian, but at the time it's just, I don't know, it just seemed kind of natural.
It was hard to swallow at the beginning, but like I could actually see this calmness that Matt had around Sarah that I thought, I will never be able to bring that out of him.
Ari's building, finally getting around to building the bookshelves.
It was like a really nice sort of moment of, I've definitely made the right decision. Like, why would I not be happy for them?
Yeah, it's extraordinary that she was okay with it. I wasn't expecting her to be okay with it, but she's very resilient.
Yeah, and
in the restaurant.
She gets emotional, but she gets over it really quickly.
Sarah would murder you.
Sarah would murder me. The only,
The first time that Poh told me the story about her and Matt and Sarah, I was like, what? And you're still friends with all of them?
It's just society that tells us that we can't finish and restart things in that way. And in very Poh style, it's like, well, actually, you know what? We can do that.
Sarah and Poh are still best friends, Matt and Poh are still best friends. And it's so stunning when you see them together.
Sarah, Matt and I run a little market store called Jam Face. We've dreamt of having a patisserie since we were at uni. I call it my church because it's on Sundays. Sarah and I both have our own specialties, and Matt is the most terrible cashier on the planet.
With all the cream and everything, it'll be just as nice.
I love the sort of closed loop cycle of cooking something, taking it to the market, setting it up, and then selling to the customers and wrapping it up and, you know, giving it away.
She wasn't that into food when I first met her. Then she really got into it. She got very good very quick.
In 2004, I had a small foray into TV through an ABC show called Beat the Chef.
Because not only do you have to cook, but you also have to interpret for your auntie because she doesn't...
The format was a professional chef versus an amateur chef.
Now, there are only a few minutes left. Are you going along well?
Yes.
You're going to get this...
I'd gone on it twice, and I even auditioned for a presenter role, was absolutely dreadful at it. Didn't get the part.
That's it, time's up, hands off, stop what you're doing.
It was Sarah who texted me this website, and it was just masterchef.com.au, and she said, I think you should try out for this.
Australia's first MasterChef has to have that kind of genius that sometimes...
No one knew anything about it because it was season 1.
Hello.
Hello.
Poh, please, something delicious.
It was a bit like So You Think You Can Dance, except we rocked up with an esky and you had to present a dish that you had already cooked.
So what are you cooking for us?
A pan-fried chicken breast.
I had originally had cooked a European dish, thinking I don't want to be pigeonholed, right?
10 marks for trying to be creative and about 2 in terms of delivery. It wasn't great. We gave Poh a second chance. It was just that little glimmer of, you know, potential that we saw. And with a little push, it's like with anything, often that pressure reveals, you know, something entirely different, which is what we got.
Right. I was actually going to make this dish called abacus beads.
Now you're talking.
Yeah.
So why don't you go and do it?
Now?
Yeah. That means you got a chance, yeah?
And I was like, what the hell? Why are they giving her a second chance? What's so special about her?
I need to show you your cupboard. My cupboard? Yeah. Yoga flour.
Luckily, Mum is like a doomsday prepper, so she had all the ingredients. I rushed back, cooked it for them, and they loved it.
That's the sort of dish that I really hoped that we'd find in this competition.
I think at that stage, I think at an audition stage, Poh hadn't really explored her culinary heritage.
My knowledge for traditional food was terrible. So I was just kind of learning on the fly and just almost cooking from imagination and memory, like palate memory.
What are you cooking?
I'm making Hainanese chicken rice today.
I just knew that she would either win it or get very close to winning it.
It's from the region of Hunan.
She almost won it.
Anybody who was in that first series that survived into, say, the top 10 became instant stars.
Poh had all sorts of opportunities.
Have you ever made dumplings before, Andre?
And I was a little bit jealous, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But she took me under her wing a couple of times. I mean, I was in Poh's kitchen as her sidekick a couple of times.
Please roll into the centre, not out.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's it, you got it.
From then, it just kept on growing and growing and growing.
A lot of people think
Is that good?
I now absolutely celebrate all of her successes.
What are you actually knitting, Bea?
Scarf.
I think everybody could see love blossoming on the set of MasterChef, but I, on the other hand, was not paying attention. And so I was really surprised when I found out that Jono and Poh had kind of formed this bond.
She said she met someone, and I said, oh, he was one of the crew. She always had a thing for like Aussie kind of looking guys, you know, traditional kind of blonde hair, surfy kind of types.
We used to sort of give each other eyes across during lunchtime because we weren't allowed to fraternise with the crew. So it was a very sort of old-fashioned romance, you know, at the beginning. What attracted me to him was there was just no games. He just was like, I really like you, let's get together. A lot of people ask me about kids, so I didn't have them with Matt because we thought it was an unstable environment to bring a child into. With Jono, we did actually get pregnant about 8 years ago, and I lost the baby at 12 weeks. So it was pretty much the day that I was allowed to tell everyone. And it was really heartbreaking. I actually went through a full labour at home. And I saw the baby, and I like bringing this up because I think it's something that people should talk about. And I think it's this sort of silent grief that women have to go through all the time. I really like to acknowledge that I really like to confront my emotions up front. Like, I think it's really healthy. I don't like to bury anything. But it was probably one of the most horrendous things I've ever been through. I might go here, see how I go. I've never grown zucchini in this bed. I find so many beautiful life analogies in the garden. I think it's in nature that you become really aware of being a speck in the firmament, and I think that is the most healthy way to go through life, to not think that you're the most important thing, but the least important thing. Jono and I broke up a little over 2 years ago, but we've stayed really good friends. There is an 8-year age gap, and I think at the beginning we thought love could conquer all, but I think little things like that start to chip away. And we realised we just had to set each other free again. Yeah. It was meant to be this little creeper here, but the grass has taken over, so I'm just trimming the grass. I do call Jono and Matt for dating advice. And it's so funny, yeah, the advice they give me, and it's just so frank. I love it, because there's no one that would know me better, right?
I think that at the moment, at the speed and rate that Poh is going in life, she would have to have a very, very savvy dude to be able to keep up with her.
Saturday is baking day for me. I bake literally from morning till night. It's usually about a 10-hour bake. I get into this rhythm on my own, put on loud music and just crash around like a psycho all day, and I love it. As much as I love doing TV, it's not real, you know? And I'm very wary of ever buying into it too much. So Jam Face really, really just keeps it real for me. Because I'm such a doer, I always want to remember what brought me here. It's the cooking, not the presenting.
I think when she starts to do something, I envision her mother looking over her shoulder and saying, you know, that's not neat enough, that's not perfect enough. I think that might be running through her head a little bit sometimes.
Funnily enough, I thank her for it, because that's absolutely given me that attention to detail that goes into everything that I do.
Oh, yeah.
I think her main drive is just creating. And it doesn't really matter what discipline it is, whether it's with you know, paint on a canvas, or whether it's with food or making TV shows. She sees the opportunities that she has now, and I think she's just really grateful for that.
I do often think back to what a wild journey I've had. And I think one thing that stands out with all the experiences I've had, like, you know, the broken marriages and all those kinds of things, is that I've learnt to become really good friends with uncertainty, to have faith in a situation, and to never fear things going pear-shaped. There's an opportunity to reinvent and start from scratch again, and I always find that quite exciting.
No one's done. Splash! All right, rolling, marking.
Worst thing Poh's ever done.
Oh!
I'm not allowed to say it out loud.
So my favourite story is when you finished the show and then just forgot everything.
I went to the shops, bought my things. Oh no, I have no money. It's okay, I'll call someone. Oh, I don't have a phone. Oh, maybe I'll just let myself into the house. Oh, I didn't bring my keys. Yeah.
So used to being looked after on MasterChef.
Oh, well, that's like when you live with him. He just stands there waiting for someone to press the button.